Thank you for joining us today. Oh, and happy Earth Day. Happy 50th anniversary of Earth Day. But Earth Day is every day. Can we get that going too? Yes. But yeah, thank you for joining us for our Meet Your Local Conservationists panel. So we have the RCD staff here. And we're gonna open it up to questions shortly. We also have some other questions we might just throw out there if we have some lulls in the questions. But we're gonna start off with Ben talking about the RCD very quickly, and then we'll do a quick introduction from everybody on staff.
Sounds good. Hi everyone, my name is Ben. I'm a Ag Conservation Manager here at Contra Costa Resource Conservation District. Contra Costa RCD, as we like to call it, is a non-regulatory special district of the state of California, serving the residents of Contra Costa County and facilitating the conservation of natural resources like air, water, and soil. We partner with federal, state, and local government agencies, in addition to private landowners, to increase conservation by increasing wildlife habitat on farms and ranches, cleaning streams and creeks of debris and trash, and working locally to prepare the people and environment of the county for the impacts of climate change. I'll let someone else go.
Thanks. So yeah, we'll do a quick round of introductions. Heidi, do you want to start off?
Sure. I'm Heidi Petty. I'm Watershed Program Manager. I work mostly in the Carquinez watershed over in Crockett, Rodeo, Port Costa, and Martinez, and Peyton Sloop.
Lisa D. Oh, I think you're on mute.
My bad, sorry. My name is Lisa Damrell, and I'm a Watershed Conservation Coordinator at the RCD. And I work pretty much in all of the watersheds, which is actually really fun. And yeah, thanks for being here.
Lisa A.
Hi, I'm Lisa Anich. I'm also a Watershed Conservation Manager. I am working with the Friends of Pinole Creek watershed. I'm also working, organizing a program we have called Action Conservation Team, and that's our program for interns. And great program. If you're interested in getting involved with the RCD, I encourage you to contact us about that.
Okay, Patty.
Hi, I am Patty Pell. I am the administrator for Contra Costa RCD, and I just keep the back room humming.
And then Elisa.
All right, hi everyone. I am Elisa Robinson. I am a Watershed Resource Manager as well. I work with the Walnut Creek Watershed Council and the Contra Costa Watershed Forum, as well as I'm doing a needs assessment in East Contra Costa County when it comes to water issues.
Nice, thanks everybody. And then I'm Chris Lim. I'm the Executive Director at the Contra Costa Resource Conservation District, responsible for the financial and programmatic oversight for the organization. Okay, so we're more than happy to take questions through the Q&A. If folks can see that button, if you kind of hover towards the bottom of the screen, the Zoom screen, you'll see a Q&A. And you can plug in your questions into there, and we can answer those questions for you. I'd prefer to get the questions through Q&A if possible. Folks can also use the chat too. But I'll just remind folks that if we get something in the chat to staff, that will repeat the question because only we can see it. So we're hoping that folks had a slew of questions to ask and hopefully make this more interactive than just talking heads, literally talking. So please feel free to ask any questions, and we'll give folks a minute to do that. But if we want to start, we have some questions that staff is going to ask of each other. Oh, we have just a question come up. Can everybody see that in our Q&A?
And we appear to have a phone-in caller, so we can read the question aloud too, I think, just so that way they know. Do you want me to take this question a little bit?
Sure.
Sure. All right, so Kamyar, hi Kamyar, thanks for coming. He's asked, hi, can you tell us how each of your jobs relate to the history of the RCD and how has the RCD evolved over time? So I can provide a brief answer to that for my program. The resource conservation districts, we were incorporated back, Contra Costa RCD specifically was incorporated in 1941 as a result of some of the practices that ultimately led to the Dust Bowl. So our agency was created along with our federal partner, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is a branch of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Together, we work to help farmers and ranchers conserve natural resources. So our roots started there. We still do that today. My line of work, I'm the Ag Conservation Manager. I work frequently with farmers and ranchers to help them address whatever natural resource concerns they're having on their farms. I can let other people talk about how their jobs have evolved over time.
Well, I'll just say something since I've been here off and on since 2000. And I think our watershed programs, we started to get involved with watershed community groups around 1994, I believe. I think that was the very early beginnings of the Friends of Alhambra Creek. And so those have been, that's getting to be quite a lot of years, but very worthwhile. We've gotten fantastic local community watershed groups, and it's really a pleasure to work with them. So that's still going strong, and we continue to just build on those programs and try to make them even more effective and do more outreach, remove more trash, plant more native plants, remove more invasives, work with schools, all of that.
I think that from the history of the RCD back in the beginning, we were closely tied with the flood control district. I think even our boards were connected at some point. And so instead of building detention basins and dams and things like that, now we're working on preserving the actual health of the watershed and making sure that our creeks are healthy. So it's gone from kind of a more concrete focus to more of a actually look at our creeks and keep them healthy and natural.
Yeah, I think one area that the RCD is trying to evolve into is doing a little bit more restoration work. We've done a lot of sort of facilitating with other watershed groups and creek groups and working with farmers and ranchers. But when I came on, was it over 2 years now? The organization was just finishing up a fish passage barrier project on Pinole Creek. So, hopefully moving forward, we can incorporate more things like that, such as living levees to help with sea level rise, and then other restoration projects as well. Anybody else for that one?
I'll just say, as the newest member of the staff, I've basically just been trying to pick up all of the tips and tricks from all of the other watershed coordinators. And so I know that's not a super exciting answer, but it's been quite a journey because it's a new field for me. So I've just really enjoyed working with this group of people.
I'd agree with that. I think that we've grown as a community, but we've added all new watershed people. And I think that we're all working together towards more of a common cohesive goal now, kind of incorporating all the different watersheds in different projects. So that's what I've seen switch, as opposed to being just focused on one watershed at a time. We tend to cross over now and really include each other, which I think has become a really new aspect of the RCD work in the watersheds.
Yeah, and while we're a lucky RCD in terms of we do receive part of the 1% parcel tax for some of our funding, but there's other opportunities out there that the organization may have not tried to tap into in the past, such as like individual donors and having a membership program. So incorporating some of these 501c3 nonprofit tactics to be able to increase our programming and staffing and things like that. Okay. Should we move on to Igor's question?
Sure. You want me to start off again, or would someone else want to do it?
I can start off. So Igor asked, how are RCD folks continuing to do work under shelter in place? Thanks for that question. I know we're all kind of dealing with this in our own lives in different ways. We at the RCD have been working from home since early March. And I know I've been really appreciative of our leadership and our board in taking that proactive step to kind of make sure that we and our constituents are safe by doing that, because we were actually staying home before we were ordered to shelter in place. Yeah, so we've all been basically doing Zoom conferences, telephone calls, and just trying to do as much as we possibly can to continue our work, including our Digital Earth Week, which you guys have obviously heard about. And yeah, we hope you're enjoying.
I'll go next and say that I've been conducting a lot of virtual site visits. Normally I would meet with farmers out in their field, talking about what crops they're trying to grow, what problems they're having, and that work continues. Our commitment to conservation is unchanged. It just is a little different now. So I've been conducting everything virtually, and it's worked pretty well. Looking forward to working with more people.
And I just comment, Friends of Pinole Creek Watershed are really keeping in touch with each other through email. In fact, it's almost harder to keep up with all the emails now than it was before we started shelter in place. They're sharing lots of ideas, lots of initiatives, people coming up with new ideas. So I think in some ways it's, you know, it's certainly not ideal, but there's a bit of a silver lining in learning to work together in new ways.
Yeah, and I'll add to that note that we are able now to have people that wouldn't normally be able to go on hikes enjoy the outdoors with us. So although we were kind of moving and thinking that way already, I think that this has prompted us to get better at doing it pretty quickly. And now we're able to invite people from their home to actually enjoy hikes or birding and outings, things like that with us, which is a really nice aspect of this.
Anybody else want to chime in? Yeah, I think, I guess from my perspective, you know, of course, everything that folks have mentioned, but, you know, trying to keep staff connected and trying to keep some sort of cohesion. So, you know, I've been instituting bi-weekly meetings with one-on-one with everybody on staff. And so these are sort of quick meetings. They're not meant to be more than 30 minutes long. And I basically just ask how folks are doing, and folks take it from there. So, you know, everybody sort of talks about different things. Everybody's free to talk about what they're feeling. You know, I'm really trying to see how people are feeling about the work. I'm not really interested so much in like the deliverables or, you know, the sort of deadlines and things like that. But I want to know how folks are doing with the work, with everything that's going on. And yeah, so I think that's been helpful. And, you know, I think it's also an opportunity for staff to know that they'll have my attention every week at this, or every 2 weeks at the same time. So folks will often have things, kind of a list of things that they want to talk about that they might not have been able to talk to me during the week, or just because of everybody's schedules. So I think it's been helpful in that way too. Okay, anybody else on this question? Thank you everybody for the questions though. Please keep them coming. So how about the question from Jennifer?
I'll go ahead and take that one. Thanks, Jennifer, for the question. Her question is, what upcoming projects do you all expect to see in your individual specialties taking part in? So, like I said, work remains uninterrupted mostly with my stuff. I've been working with these farmers, conducting these virtual site tours. We just actually got exciting news. We received a $170,000 grant from CalRecycle. One of the major parts of my program is working with farmers and ranchers to combat illegal dumping that's taking place out on their farm or ranch. So we just passed that, or we just got notified of that just last week. So I'm going to be working with 5 sites now to put together a budget and a work plan and remove hopefully a lot of trash and tires and vehicles and let's see, other chemicals that have been dumped on these properties for the last 10 or 15 years. So looking forward to getting back to work on that, but in the meantime, taking the opportunity we can to really hone in on our budget and develop a really strong work plan.
Chris, do you want to talk about the Alhambra Creek stuff that we're doing right now? The Coastal Conservancy, maybe?
You can.
Okay. So we've been working with, it's basically a neighborhood. It started with a neighborhood of people that had some erosion issues in their creek that their houses back up to on Alhambra Creek in Martinez. And so we've done a lot of tours and a lot of meetings and a lot of investigation and site visits. And we are looking to, we've actually submitted a grant to do some survey work to see if a grant that we'd like to do the project with is even a potential. So it's kind of a starting point where we find out if the grant is even, if a grant is even feasible to do a project. So that's one thing that we're currently working on right now. So it's kind of a pre-grant grant, which I think is part of the process. When you're trying to figure out how best to do things, you also need to do that survey work to find out if it's even a feasible project. So.
Anybody else?
I'll go next. So for me, it's the Walnut Creek Watershed Council and the Contra Watershed Forum. And specifically the Watershed Forum, it's this kind of an evolutionary year for it, because we just celebrated the 20th anniversary last year. And so we're trying to see where we're going to go and how we're going to do things differently. And we had a lot of great ideas come out of the symposium in late 2019. And so developing those and making them part of the regular working operations for the Watershed Forum, like having field trips every other month and getting people outdoors and regularly seeing projects that are going on in Contra Costa County and the surrounding areas. That's something that I'm really excited to do once we are able to gather once again. And then for the needs assessment that we're doing in East Contra Costa County, finishing up our listening sessions, which is actually getting out and talking to small groups of people about water issues that they see and identify in their own community. We have 3 of those left to do, and I'm looking forward to getting those done and moving on to phase 2 for the needs assessment.
I guess I'll go. So lots of upcoming projects, but many of them kind of depend on us being able to get back with people and back onto a lot of the sites that we work on. I personally can't wait to continue working on a new school garden at Rodeo Hills Elementary, and getting back over to Alhambra Creek and working with those folks. And it's been amazing to be able to work with those folks via Zoom and stuff, but it's not everything that we normally need to be able to do in order to make things happen. So hopefully we'll get the okay sometime soon to be able to gather with people, and then we can get back out to work on getting rid of invasive plants in our creeks and do cleanups. These are all things that obviously we can't do from home. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, and then for me, I'm looking at projects that involve adapting to sea level rise and building resilience in our watersheds. My background before joining the RCD is I built the native oyster reef at Point Pinole. So along the same sort of thinking, we're partnering with the Rodeo Sanitary District to hopefully construct a horizontal levee or a living levee. This is in replace of a vertical seawall. You basically construct a marsh with a very gentle slope. So instead of having concrete in the bay to help with flooding, we're actually, the solution is a nature-based solution that would also provide habitat for wildlife, but then also is a win for the sanitary district because they're able to put their effluents into the marsh and then decrease their nitrogen levels, which is something mandated or will be mandated to them by the State Water Board very shortly. And we sort of see this project as something that can be replicated all throughout the Bay to help with sea level rise and flooding. And one of the tactics in our tool belt to hopefully not have people manage in their retreat. So hopefully it's a project that can be replicated and ours can be a model for other folks throughout the Bay Area. Okay, seeing no other comments, we'll move on to the next question from Eric.
Thanks for the question, Eric. I guess I'll start just based on kind of what I just said about the working with kids on school gardens. That's one thing that is a really great way to connect with school kids without necessarily having to ask teachers for time during their day. So that's been a really nice way to get kids involved and interested in gardening and nutrition and stuff like that. So that's one way. And then also very excited to be working with Heidi on Call of the Sea. Heidi, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Call of the Sea we're actually doing, our program is called Ridges to Reefs, and it's a kids program that basically starts at the top of the watershed with some activities, some education in classroom, and then some activities outside the classroom out in the field. So for example, a hike at Fernandez Ranch, which is the top of Rodeo Creek watershed, and then going a little further down with a little more education, maybe some water quality monitoring and that kind of thing. And then finally ending where the creek meets the bay and doing an educational lesson there. Quite potentially, Chris will be doing a little bit of oyster stuff at the creek mouth. And from there, we're partnering with Call of the Sea, who has educational ships out in Sebastopol. And they basically will take all of those same kids out, starting at the Bay Model. I'm sorry, my dog is here. Starting at the Bay Model, and show them where they've been in the watershed, and then actually take them out to the bay onto a ship and give them a piece of education while showing them how to sail. So we're pretty excited about that. And we're probably be launching, hopefully, our pilot program in 2022-ish is what we're hoping for. So nice partnership with Call of the Sea. All right, I'm going to mute because my roosters and dogs are all going to, hold on.
One other way that we kind of engage with young people is working with scouts. So I know that Heidi has often done hikes with scouts, and I'm actually going to be on Sunday doing a virtual activity with some scouts. So that's just another avenue through which we can, make young people aware of what we do and the importance of the environment.
And I just want to also mention both Elisa and I are working with Earth Team, and that is a nonprofit, and that's high school student interns. They're becoming leaders in their communities, and we've both found it really wonderful to work with that group in our watershed groups. If Elisa wants to add to that.
I would, because I know a lot of my focus is on the high school and community college. So through the Walnut Creek Watershed Council and through the forum, and also through the needs assessment, we've actually engaged a lot with our high schools in Pittsburgh and Antioch, and then LMC, Los Angeles College and Diablo Valley College. We're engaging with both of them as well, just because those are our next environmental leaders, and we should make sure that they're engaged with what we're doing, so that maybe down the line they can be staff here at the RCD, or at least part of our committees, or our watershed groups.
Yeah, I think in terms of thinking about education for young people, we've been really creative with the technology that we have now. So I think we're gonna have to sort of rethink some of the ways that we use technology or how we can take advantage of it. I'm really interested. I mean, obviously, bringing kids out into their own watershed and getting them wet and dirty can't be replaced by technology. Having them cruise on the bay on a ship can't be replaced by technology. But maybe it's a way for us to include students who may not be able to go on some of these trips. Or maybe it's a way for us to, let's say we partnered with Google and we had virtual reality glasses for all the students during one of our in-class presentations, and we were able to show them the path of deep water ocean currents to show how connected our world is. Or we show them, maybe some other different place that they wouldn't normally be able to go. And then talk about watersheds in that way to, draw parallels to their watersheds here at home. So, those are some things that I'd be interested in, and hopefully one day we can see those happen in classrooms. Anybody else on that? Okay, thanks for the question. All right, let's move on to Dawn's question.
All right, I think I can take that one since it's Walnut Creek related. Operating in Walnut Creek, the city itself and then areas adjacent is Friends of the Creeks. Leslie Hunt leads that one. And then along Rossmore Parkway, not sure where that is exactly. I know there's some restoration areas up by Rossmore, the actual community. Patty, I think you might know that road, know that area kind of well. I don't know if you know if there's any open space along there or not. And we do get involved with educational and interpretive watershed sites. A couple that we have coming up is actually through the Walnut Creek Watershed Council in our efforts to remove arundo and replace it with native plants throughout the watershed. There is a sign program that we're developing. I guess that's the best word for that program. And then we also do education throughout the year. We have different projects going on from whenever we do trash removal, we work on education. And then it's the same with any invasive plant removal or native plant planting. It's all about educating and engaging people that come out there and show an interest, and then to inspire people that don't come out all that often to join us more often and do more things in their own watershed. And Patty, did you?
Well, I know the area because I happen to live by there, but I'm unaware of any watersheds that it might include. Watershed groups, I'm sorry. In fact, I know I'm a couple blocks away from Rossmore, and I'm in the county. I'm not sure if Rossmore is the county or the city. I think it might be the city.
Okay, I think that for that one then, Friends of the Creeks, Leslie Hunt, that'd be your best smaller watershed group. And then the Walnut Creek Watershed Council is always open to the public, and we're here to help if you have questions, and we can always try to get you to somebody that can help if it's not us.
Mhm.
And just to add before we move on, you can go to our website and go to our contact page, and you can get all the emails for everyone and the idea of which watersheds they work in if you want specific questions later on.
I was going to mention too that there is also a group called Sustainable Rossmoor. I know that's in the community of Rossmoor, but those folks are definitely sustainability minded, and they may know of some other folks or resources that you could tap into.
Okay, anybody else on this one? Okay. Well, we have one more question and we have about 10 more minutes. So why don't we do this one question and see how much time we have left. And if anybody has any more questions, please add them. Thank you.
I think I'll start with Jennifer. Thank you for another great question. I think this is kind of one of my favorite things right now. We were talking about it earlier, I'm not even sure who with, about seeing animals in the city streets and seeing a reduction of pollution. And we were even discussing, I think that was Ben maybe, the fact that the birds have different songs these days in response. I thought that was kind of interesting, a little more chipper out there. And I have done a lot of thinking about this, and I think what will come of this is people will come out of their homes, after all the darkness, and really learn a new appreciation for how important it is to be outside and to be with each other and see the cleaner creeks and see the cleaner air. And I think it will inspire people that hadn't taken the time to really think about those issues to make note, because I think at this point you are actually, as I go out into my own yard, I can see that the air quality is better. So I think the interesting thing that will happen for this is that we'll see a new group of people interested in things that they didn't know they were. And I think people watching all these podcasts of the goats running through England's streets and might take note that we are part of their environment as well, and that it's not just our world. So I'm looking forward to see what happens. So, and to seeing after people are indoors with their families, doing things like Chris's podcast today, learning little lessons, kind of that connection, the changing connections between people and their environment. So that's my 2 cents.
I agree with Heidi completely. Another nice surprise that I've seen has been that because people are kind of limited in what they can do right now, they have more willingness to learn about things that they can do from home, whether that is what kind of resources they can conserve from home, how they can compost, stuff like that, but also how people are willing to participate in citizen science and learn how to get involved in that, since you can do that by just looking out your window. So, I think those have been some of the surprises that have been really nice to see.
Yeah, to answer that, I think I've seen maybe a little more interest in some of the programs we have at the RCD now that it's kind of opened up, I guess, more available time for farmers and ranchers to sit back and think about maybe the longer term health of their operations, which is leading them to more sustainable and regenerative agriculture practices. So we'll see what comes out of it, but I'm liking what I'm seeing thus far.
And for me, I'm going to kind of look at the open space and parks perspective, because that's one of the things that people have really been able to get out and enjoy, because you're at home and they encourage you to get out for your walks and take your dog for walks. And if you have a park that's, maybe a couple miles away, you can go out and go hiking and indulge in things that you don't normally get to do because you're so busy rushing around from work to home to other commitments. And so we've seen an uptick in the use of the Eastern Regional Park District parks throughout the county and throughout Alameda County. And some of them are closed down, some of them are harder to access now because they don't have bathrooms or visitor centers open, but people are still going and still getting out and experiencing it. And sometimes, some of them it's for the first time. But it's now that they know it's there and they know that it's a good resource for them to engage with nature. I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited to see more people out in parks, especially when they can, you know, actually get water or go to the bathroom or go to a visitor center and talk to a ranger about these cool things they're seeing. And maybe they have questions that I hope they have questions that they're storing up for them.
Yeah, I actually just talked about this a little bit at the presentation earlier that I gave. I was showing pictures of some of the wildlife, you know, in Yosemite and some of the cities like in Japan, wildlife just kind of wandering around and taking advantage of folks not being there. And, you know, I think those are nice stories. But for me, when I look at those, you know, I think about habitat degradation and kind of how we've, you know, chopped up lots of different habitats for our wildlife. But I'm also hopeful too, because it reminds me of, you know, us doing restoration work. Like if we just give Mother Nature a little bit of a helping hand, how quickly nature recovers.
Well, and I like everything everyone said. And I have a comment that probably leads to a whole different conversation, but as a result of thinking about all this, I hope we're rethinking, if we're looking at things in a new ways, thinking about agriculture. Farm workers have been on my mind a lot. They're very essential workers, and you know, a lot of open questions. We could be doing a lot better. I'll just leave it at that, but hope we come back from this looking at things with, you know, fresh perspective.
I agree with everything that's been said. In fact, even on the hike this morning, we all stopped and just noticed all the wildflowers that were out there, just gorgeous. They've probably always been there. We just have never noticed. And also I'm struck by how much work I am able to get done at home. And so, you know, there'll probably not be a need to drive to the office every single day, which will help. And then too, I'm doing a lot of cleaning. I don't know about the rest of you, but just reevaluating all the purchases, because, you know, it does end up just getting thrown away. So, I don't know if it'll ever be quite the same.
I think that's an interesting note, Patty, the idea that we're just building up all the garbage in our own atmosphere and realizing how much we create ourselves.
Right.
You know, when you're out in the public, you're throwing it away in a garbage can at the park or at the store, but now it's all going into our own trash receptacles, and we're having to realize what our footprint is. Agree.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great segue into tomorrow's presentation.
And what is that on, Elisa?
About recycling. Well, one of tomorrow's presentations, there's two. Recycling and how we use things, and our impact on landfills. So yeah. Again, tomorrow at 3 for that one. Good job, Patty.
Right.
Okay, were there any last responses to Jennifer's question?
Great question, Jennifer. Thank you.
Yeah. So we maybe have time for one more question, but we don't have any in Q&A. Does anybody want to throw one out there?
I think one of the ones that I was interested in and prepared for was why we do what we do. Like each of us individually, what inspires you to start down this path of conservation? I can go first since I'm prepared.
Thanks.
I have a visual aid. So it actually inspired me was I was working for the state of California in something totally unrelated to environment. I was in the Department of Fair Employment and Housing. And I got home from work one day and was having dinner, and there was this magazine if you can see it or not, National Geographic on the table, and I started reading it. And I had been to the Grand Canyon shortly, like maybe a couple months before that. And there's this fold out actually of, this beautiful vista. And then kind of right in the middle, sorry, there's so much glare, but kind of right in the middle is like smokestacks. And it's talking about the impacts that we're having on our national parks. I've always been a parks person. And then those natural lands, those landscapes have always inspired me. And so reading the article and getting all up in arms about it is what inspired me to go into the environmental field and go back and get my bachelor's degree in natural resource planning. And then when I was looking at it today, I realized that a lot of the stuff that was in this article that inspired me is stuff that I'm working on, even though I'm not working in a park like I thought I was going to be. How we impact our natural lands, how industry impacts our natural lands, invasive species, and how we can help get rid of them and what they're doing, climate change, and inspiring the next generation. Those are all key points in that article, and they're all things that I feel like I get to work on now. So that's what inspired me, and it was amazing for me to realize that I'm still kind of doing this, even though it wasn't the path that I thought I was going to be on.
Maybe I should go. I actually was not educated in natural resources. I was a neurologist. I was going into neurology, but I grew up in Chico, and therefore I grew up in nature and in a community that really respects nature and doesn't pollute. Generally, you don't see people throwing garbage out windows in Chico unless somebody's going to chase them down. So I grew up in a creek. I grew up with little frogs and nature around me, and I've always been really involved. We've hiked, I've camped, and all of that all of my life. So it just came naturally to me. But there was a point where I was going into my PhD program for neurology, and I had 2 children, so that was not feasible anymore. So I took some time off and started working in my community of Crockett, and spent quite a bit of time really working with the community itself. And I was actually hired at the RCD because of my connection to the community. And it just happened to be the perfect fit for me because as a person, I try to live that lifestyle, lots of glass and metal and no plastic and things like that. So I just naturally fell right into the world of environmentalism. So it's kind of separate and different than everybody else's path. And so it's kind of neat to see that you can end up here on a completely different road, and here we are, and 13 years later I love to work in the creeks and I love to work with the kids and the environment. So there's my little kind of personal, you can just trip into this if it's good for you,
I can definitely pick up from there. I also was not a student of natural resources in school. I worked in publishing for 10 years. And I guess I had a kind of a long-term great relationship just with nature and wanting to know more about nature, and realizing as I got older that a lot of people don't have that connection at all, and that unless we help people understand our connection to nature, they're not really going to care about conserving it or preserving it. And so, being able to do this work and help people see, what a difference they can make has just been so much more gratifying than I could have imagined.
I'd say that, I don't know, I was probably inspired by it, but I think a lot of where my inspiration came from was Boy Scouting. Spent a lot of time up at summer camps, huddled in the various nature lodges, picking up all of the nature merit badges. And looking back on it now, didn't really think much of it then other than, hey, this sounds like an interesting thing. And just kind of thinking about where I'm at now is kind of interesting. But as a Boy Scout, one of my actual Eagle project was helping restore a small part of the Jurupa Mountains Nature Center down in Southern California. So again, at the time, I didn't think much of it other than it was a fun project and I was doing some good in the community. But really more recently looking at it, I think that's where it started for me. After that, went to school at Cal, got a degree in environmental science, and then spent a couple more years out at Indiana getting degrees in natural resource management. And now I'm actually doing natural resource management out here. So it's not exactly what I set out to do, working with the agricultural community, but the ag community has a huge part to play, and there's a lot of ag land out here in eastern Contra Costa especially. So we can all work together to make our farms and ranches more sustainable and more, I guess, welcoming to wildlife.
Lisa, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, it'd be a too long of a story, actually. So, but basically, I started out as consultant in hydrology and doing stream flow forecast modeling. I still do some of that, and I really enjoy working on the human communication, planning, a little more social and policy side of watershed science, because as Chris pointed out in his talk today, people are part of the environment. So that's it.
Great, yeah. Same with Lisa. This would take me a while to explain, but I'll give the very short version. I didn't have that sort of outdoor experience as a kid. Being my family, a family of immigrants, being outdoors and camping is like weird. Why would you want to be outside and in the woods? So I didn't have that experience. I know that's sort of a lot of folks have that connection to it. But for me, it probably started in college. I was a biology major, emphasized in marine biology and oceanography. And then once I had that kind of aha moment of, yeah, like everything is connected and everything we do is based on the health of our planet. And I've always been driven by wanting to make it better for future generations. That sort of leave no trace attitude. And yeah, there's, there were always sorts of these environmental issues. And I saw my path as a way to help out with that. If you had asked me 10 years ago that some of the environmental issues that we're coming up with now would be a part of my work, these are really big things. And, it's generational work, and we're doing our best with it. There's definitely solutions that we can come up with. But again, like inspiring that next generation of environmental stewards is really important, because of this work is going to have to continue beyond us. So building up that support from young people, having them know why this work is important and how they can take care of it and how they can continue it. Those are pretty primary to what I see as my role here at the RCD. But yeah, it's been a good path, and it's continuing. Okay, anybody want to chime in on that one to end us? Any last questions from our attendees? Okay, with nothing, yeah, I'd just like to thank everybody. Thanks everybody, staff, for taking the time and sharing some of your story. Thank you for all the attendees for attending on the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. If you have any other questions, please feel free to email any of us. And we hope we see you at the upcoming presentations. We have one tomorrow at 1 o'clock. That's all about Delta weeds. I saw some of the video and it's looking good. The afternoon presentation at 3 p.m. is about 4Rs and recycling. And you'll also hear about yard composting and kitchen composting. And then our last presentation on Friday is an interview with Harold Wood and his experience he was one of the first people to help start Earth Day 50 years ago at his college campus. So he has some nice stories to share. Okay, well, thank you everybody for attending. Have a good rest.
You all.
Thank
Happy
you.
Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day. Thanks, everybody.